everybody, welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Don't forget, every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I have a new interview, a new opinion piece, or some horror news for you to come and check out. But what are we talking about here tonight? Folks, the holiday season is still going on. We got a little bit of time left before the month is over here. And while next week, I'm going to hit you with what I think was the absolute best of the year, we are still going to try to get a few more things in before that time comes around. So tonight, I am diving into a holiday horror film that I had a chance to see last year, but I never came back and dropped a review for it for y'all. So we're going to do it right here in 2024. Folks, tonight I am talking It's a Wonderful Knife. That's right, this film is a send-up of the holiday classic It's a Wonderful Life. You might remember that one about George Bailey, who wishes he was never born, and then when he's seen an alternate future by the help of an angel that shows him how things would be worse off without his existence, George decides he wants his life back and gets back to his original timeline, is able to make amends for all these things. It's a Wonderful Knife is a send-up of that film that focuses on Winnie Carruthers, a young girl who, displeased with the relationships in her life, whether it's with friends or with family, and with a serial killer in her small town of Angel Falls and an evil mayor who is looking to bend things to his will, decides that Angel Falls will be better off without her living as well too, and makes that wish and finds herself transported to a new timeline to where Winnie never existed, her family never had her, and things are much worse off without her existence. Now, if you have not seen this film before, obviously I think a lot of the buy-in for this movie is your knowledge and your familiarity with the movie It's a Wonderful Life. Not saying you can't enjoy this without it, but very obviously you're going to have much more of an interest in this if you've seen the original film. Now, I myself, I am not a big fan of It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of the few films around the holiday season that I just see too much of and hear too much of, so it doesn't really do anything good for me. A Christmas Story and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, they're on that list as well too, but don't kill me. Please don't unsubscribe for that. But anyway, though, so what happens in the earlier part of this story is that we follow Winnie around as she finds out that there is a serial killer terrorizing her town, and it seems that this serial killer has the same interests as our mayor, Henry Waters, played by Justin Long. We're introduced to the film that Mayor Waters is looking to renovate a portion of this town to build his new gigantic shopping center extravaganza, to where there's everything to do, but there's still just a few holdouts that are standing directly in his way. Now, It's a Wonderful Life is not here to play the whodunit game. You're not trying to figure out who's behind the mask of this angel-look serial killer. That's not the purpose of this at all, as number one, they expose who the original killer is before Winnie ends up in the alternate timeline. But then number two, that's still not the focus of the alternate timeline as well too. Remember, and It's a Wonderful Life, it was a lot about those relationships that George Bailey had and about how the loss of those relationships hurt a number of these other people. Now, unfortunately here, what It's a Wonderful Life, where it ends up faltering, is that we don't really get to see the negative effects so much of Winnie not existing. Her family is directly affected by this, that her younger brother, Jimmy Carruthers, played by Aiden Howard, it no longer is here. He's been killed off by the killer. Winnie was not there to stop it, and the rest of her family is suffering due to this. Now, Jimmy Carruthers as a character is a great and fascinating one, because Jimmy is the typical jock bro that you would see in horror movies of the past, and would be the guy who's a bit of a bully, but also a womanizer, somebody who's big into sex, and that's all they're about. Now, that's Jimmy, but Jimmy is gay, and Jimmy is proudly gay, and I loved that about this movie, just for the fact that Michael Kennedy, who has done a number of films that we've seen here before, that some better than other ones for sure. Like, I was very much a big fan of Freaky. And as I've spoke about recently, I was not the biggest fan of Time Cut at all. But the upcoming film Hard Eyes, starring Scream alumni Mason Gooding, looks really good. But either way, this kind of goes align with what Michael Kennedy has brought us over the films that he's written over the last few years. And with that, Again, just love the way that Jimmy was presented on screen, because it shows in 2024, we can still have a lot of those norms that we had back in like the 70s and 80s, but we can add a spin to them and they could still feel incredibly normal. So, bravo to you, Michael Kennedy. That rocked. Now, in terms of the killing here of It's a Wonderful Knife, again, it's not the star of the show here. There is a decent amount of blood for sure. And some of the killings are a little bit more brutal than others, but again, it's not really the focus of the film itself. You're going to get some interesting looking ones for sure, but I will say is that Michael Kennedy focuses this film more so on the character work than it is about the setups for these elaborate deaths. Characters aren't really given that much. Like, there's one or two, and I did really enjoy the fact that one of the characters that got an elaborate death was just a random character. Nobody important to the plot, but it's kind of like, Kennedy is like, oh yeah, I need to throw like maybe one more death in there. Let me just pepper that in. And it ends up being one of the more interesting ones of the film. But that being said, again, it's the character work and the relationships that are that much more important. I think that one of the most common misconceptions about this film is that even though Winnie Carruthers is the one who says that she wishes that she was never born, and she's really set up to play the George Bailey role of being in this alternate timeline, and she's the one that's got to fix things in order to get back to her original one, I do think that we need to also take a look at Bernie Simon, played by Jess McLeod, as actually being our Jimmy in this case here. And I only say that because I don't want to spoil anything, but the ending makes it very clear that it wasn't just Winnie who was along for this ride in the alternate timeline, and the fact that Bernie almost seems like she has to fix more than Winnie does. It seems very clear that Bernie and Winnie are either sharing the role as Jimmy in this case here, or it is more than likely that Bernie is actually our Jimmy in this case. That she, I say Jimmy because of James Stewart. That's just in my head, is Jimmy Stewart. But it makes more sense here that Bernie is really playing the Jimmy Stewart role here more so than Jane Widdop is. Now, I might be crazy about this. Y'all can tell me in the comment section if you agree with that, but I really do think that Bernie really is Jimmy Stewart's George Bailey over Jane Widdop playing that role instead. Now, beyond that, it is a bit predictable. And I don't think that's a negative thing here for the film, because again, this is not really set up as a whodunit. You're kind of supposed to know who's behind everything to begin with. And I think in that aspect, the film really does accomplish what it's supposed to be doing in the first place. That we know who the killer is, and we can spend more time focusing on these relationships that Jane and Bernie and other characters in the town of Angel Falls end up having. Now, the film is not entirely successful, and it's strictly because of those reasons. The character work is truly fantastic. But when it comes to the slasher side of the film, there's a lot that's going to leave a lot of us wanting for more. Unfortunately, due to the way that they go with the killer in the second half of the film, you would think that there would be much more of an emotional investment in that, maybe a little bit more for Winnie to work with, but there really isn't. And in my opinion, that ultimately hurts the film in a way that it just can't really overcome. I think It's a Wonderful Life is a good movie. I enjoy it for sure, and it's definitely one that for the last year that I've enjoyed putting on for the holiday season. But it's not without its own faults, and that's one of the big ones, that the horror element of it seems very much tacked on to a good story about a young woman or a couple of young women trying to figure out their own space in this town, whether it's with each other or completely alone. That part works very well, but it's the horror element that just doesn't work so well with that. And I love the setups that they do for it. You know, a big part of the film is that our mayor, played by Justin Long, Henry Waters, is not a good guy at all. And when he's trying to put his shopping mall together that he's trying to build, one of the last people that stands in his way kind of calls out the fact that, you know, the mayor is going to make everybody his drones. And that's very much picked up on a little bit later on in the movie. And I like the foreshadowing that gets done there in a number of other places, but the film falters in a lot of others, unfortunately. Great cast. Like, this is a phenomenal cast in this film. You know, I got to see one of my favorites, Cassandra Nod, show up, who you might remember from Influencer. Does a great job. And I just got to see her make a few appearances in the show Loudermilk on Netflix. Such a good show. If you have not watched Loudermilk, go and check that out. Catherine Isabel, horror royalty. Ginger Snaps, y'all. Freddy vs. Jason shows up in this one as well, too, as Winnie's aunt. Of course, Justin Long is obviously in this one here. And even Joel McHale, who I love from Deliver Us from Evil, shows up here in a big role here too. So the cast of It's a Wonderful Life is a really, really good one. And again, I think the character work is superb in this. I think their send-up of It's a Wonderful Life works really, really well. But the slasher elements, unfortunately, just don't kind of live up to the rest of the movie. They're just not as strong as everything else that's there. Got some good laughs, got some good character works, not so great in the horror department, but I'm so curious in the comment sections for y'all to tell me what you think of this one. Where does it stack up against the rest of your holiday horror? Let me know for a chance to win yourself a great prize. Again, I'm not telling you what it is for the month of December. I'll reveal that on the Wednesday show here, folks. But if you comment, you get a chance to win whatever my prize is going to end up being. That's going to do it for me tonight. I appreciate y'all tuning in. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.